Hello and welcome to DFS Coach Talk. It is Wednesday, May 19th, 2021. I am Andrew Hansen, alongside Joe Sarvati, affectionately known as Coach. And today, Coach, we get the Western Conference play-in. 2 games starting at 7:30. I'm sure looking forward to this one.
I'll tell you what, man, I am fired up for these games tonight. I think there's a lot more opportunity to build some good competitive lineups and 2 games that should be very interesting as well, fairly low spread, so we should have good games as opposed to what I'll call Black Tuesday yesterday.
Yes.
And as you can see, I wore my black hat and my black shirt, Andrew, and I want to own up to yesterday because, we come on here and we give our opinions and we work our asses off to give you the best of everything we got. Sometimes you fall down right on your noggin and it is what it is. But I wanted to use this as a teaching experience for our members and for our listeners to not do what I did yesterday, because we're always telling you what to do, but it's humbling and it's not great sometimes to admit some of the mistakes that you made, but it's important because what you can do best is, and we've talked about this here last night and before the show, because I was so upset yesterday, was what's the best thing you can do from a day like that? Learn from it. Let's not just completely brush it off. We will, as far as once we talk about this, we bury it, it's dead. Today's fresh. DFS, everybody's got zero again. We crushed the slate. But I want to bring up a few things, Andrew. First of all, a couple of lessons. You got to wait for late news. You got to wait for lineups. But overreacting like I did with Biombo and a lot of the community, people in different across the industry did the same thing. But overreacting and just punching somebody in there because their low salary makes different things work is not always a good idea. You've got to think that through better. So that's number one. Secondly, if you're struggling to build a lineup on a slate and it looks very difficult and you're back and forth, and I was in touch with Andrew a few times yesterday with how difficulty I was having getting the lineup to work. So on situations like that, the obvious is cut your play back a little bit. If it looks that tough, yeah, everybody was fired up. It was first night of this play-in thing and all that stuff. Back up the play a little bit if it's an unsure, not strong group that you're putting together. And mine was difficult all day, and I couldn't get it settled. And so that was one thing. The third thing is don't chase. And I made the mistake yesterday. And this, again, I'm a pro at this. I do it for a living. But everybody makes mistakes. The best pro in the world makes mistakes. The beginner makes mistakes. But learning from these so we don't repeat them, which I seldom do. What I did yesterday is after I was dead in that first game, I chased and played the single game, second game by itself, put lineups out to our members. And I apologize to Andrew because I didn't consult him. We talk about every lineup, every posting. Our 2 heads are better than one 99.9% of the time. But I was reeling, and I chased, and I posted. And, it did better, but not good enough. But it was a mistake. When you're struggling like that or having a bad night, chalk it up, suck it up, let it play itself out, and don't chase. So I wanted to share those in a humbling manner because I can't remember the last time something like that happened to me overall, but it is what it is. It's in the past. I apologize to our members. I apologize to Andrew, and I apologize to our listeners. So that's buried along with 2 guys that we're not going to speak of again, named Bismack Biombo and Semi Ojale. So they're dead to us here at Coach Talk.
Yeah, no, good lessons, and I'll chip in with Ojale. It's it's a fine line because I talked about him with our members. He was the last guy in my cash lineup. He made the prices work for everybody else, who I felt better about, and it was a solid lineup. LaMelo underperformed, but other than that, it was fine. But Ojale, he got a 0, but he played. He missed his shots in the first half. He didn't get his minutes in the second. And he's a guy that you play, and you're not very comfortable about him because he's not a big DFS points per minute guy. But
Right.
the fine line I'm referencing is that sometimes on a 2-game slate, you have to feel a little bit uncomfortable with at least one guy.
Definitely.
Otherwise, everybody would just smash all the time with guys they love,
Yeah.
and that's
And
not what we
and
get.
on top of that, Andrew, like we're not going to have the issue tonight, but when you're trying to jam in a 12-5 Westbrook or a couple of 10 plus thousand plus guys like Sabonis and Beal and all this, it just was one of those nasty perfect storms where you had to bite the bullet and pray that the guy you bit the bullet on didn't collapse and not do anything, and it happens. But I think your play was sharp. We chalk it up, and tonight we've got great games. We've already talked and built up some lineups, and things look much brighter, sir.
They do, and believe it or not, as you know, I'm psyched about my lineup on FanDuel right now.
Yeah.
And it feels like a pretty quiet slate in terms of news. And
Right.
so the final lesson is, again, to follow up on your point, take each slate separately, and
Yes.
and don't chase the next day either.
No,
I mean,
no.
you have a night that doesn't go well. The next day, don't double up your play. Evaluate it independently. Is this a normal slate for me, or
Right.
do I really like it? Or if I don't like it again, you stay light again. But I feel really good about this FanDuel build.
Yeah.
So let's work towards it and start with San Antonio, Memphis. They start a little bit later tonight, Coach. We'll have more time to work through things.
Yeah, that was also awkward that it started at such an odd time yesterday. Everything was awkward. But today, like you said, it's much more back to normal. Yeah, for our members, stay within that coach talk process that we talk about all the time. If you stay in those percentages of playing of what's in your bankroll, you're good. Good, bad, or indifferent, 5-star, 2-star, play the same thing. And for our listeners that don't have access to that coach talk process, join us, because it really does help you keep your game in play. And I certainly could have collapsed way worse yesterday if I didn't stay somewhat in the parameters of that process. So, as you mentioned, a good start time. It feels much better. 7:30 game. San Antonio Spurs, Memphis Grizzlies. Memphis is -4. It's a 222.5 over under. The other game's 218, so not that much different. A little bit higher. As far as pace goes for the season, San Antonio was dead in the middle at 15. Memphis was 8. And then from defensive efficiency, San Antonio sunk all the way to 22nd, which they had worked hard to get up to as high as 16 at one point, but definitely struggled down the stretch. Memphis all the way up to 6th, Andrew. How about that? I mean, they were in the teens most of the season, so they buckled it down. A little old grindhouse ball playing some defense here towards the end of the season. So that's something to keep in mind. And then you don't have really two very offensive efficient teams here in San Antonio 21 and Memphis 15. So, we're not going to see fireworks and 50-point games, I doubt, today like we did yesterday. As far as the injury front, it's, only one really of note. Grayson Allen is questionable, and that does affect the rotation for Memphis with those guards, with all the guards that they have come in, which they play several, so it doesn't really, even if he's out, doesn't make Melton a lock or any of the other guys, because they do rotate 3 or 4 guys in that spot, Bain, the rookie, etc. The other McDermott, who no one seems to ever know who he is, he's been out all season for Memphis, but he deserves a mention. He's on the list. And then Lyles, questionable for the Spurs, and Jeffries and Samancic are out. So nothing really that's going to affect their rotation. So we have a pretty clean game to look at here. We've both gone into a pretty good in-depth look at, prior games against each other, who's played well, who hasn't. A couple of things that I was looking at, Andrew, is I try to avoid Dylan Brooks' defense as much as I can, but as we talked about before the show, it's been a little bit of a mixed bag with Dylan Brooks guarding DeMar DeRozan. DeMar smoked him the first game, held him down somewhat the second, and then clamped him the third. So we've had all three different types of responses there. But I love the way Dylan's defending. So, you got to fade some of the chalk guys, and DeRozan may be that spot that I go. But I do like DeJounte Murray. He's playing terrific. Talk about a stocks guy that can add different numbers into everything. So he's going to be somebody that's high on my list. He's my favorite Spur in this game. I don't think Jakob Poeltl's a bad play. He's certainly going to get big minutes with Jonas in there. And I may consider him at the center spot. When you only have four centers to choose from, it gets, you don't have as much of a decision there. As far as the Memphis side, I do like the fact that Dylan Brooks is going to be out there, 40 minutes probably if he has to, and he's a grinder. He's always on my radar. Ja is playing very, very well, shooting the ball better, but DeJounte Murray defense is pretty nasty, man. He is long and lean. So the jury's out on Ja for me. I'm excited to see what you think about Ja, because I know you were one of the first guys that I know that were on the Ja bandwagon before he even played his first game. So I know he goes way back for your top lists. Other guys you could look at, but I'm probably not going to go there. Kyle Anderson continues to just do the same thing and put up numbers, but it's a little risky there. Same thing with Brandon Clark. When the whole group plays, he seems to get squeezed out the most. So I'm not as crazy about those guys. Jaren Jackson is the one that I really have been following the last 2 weeks. His increased minutes, what he gets done on the floor. I don't think they have a great matchup for him. Keldon Johnson's a little undersized to guard him. I mean, Jackson is a legit center size player, and he can get hot from three. I really like the potential with him, and probably not going to go Joe Val with the fear of his constant foul trouble and having to play against a big size guy like Poeltl. So not crazy about the bench players, to be honest. And no one really jumps out at me. But I think you can find enough value in these lineups, to get some decent exposure of this game. And the slate to me looks like you need exposure from both games. You don't have to monster stack one or the other. I could see myself splitting, between the two games and having exposure both ways. So look forward to hearing your breakout on this one, Andrew.
Yeah, I agree with you in terms of the balance. Again, you look at the totals for the two games, 222 and then 219, net down to 218. And a little bit surprising because if you look at the matchups in the regular season, game one here, their three matchups, the totals were between 235 and 250. And
Wow.
Game two, Golden State Lakers were more low scoring. They ranged from 208 to 228. So all three of the San Antonio Memphis totals ended up higher than the highest Golden State LA game.
That's a tremendous point, because I'll say this, Andrew. I think the industry is going to play more guys from the Golden State Lakers game.
It's a sexier game. I mean, it's LeBron, it's Steph, Draymond, AD, all these big stars.
Yeah.
So I agree. That's the natural tendency.
But it's deceiving.
It is deceiving. And let's also mention, again, San Antonio Memphis is 9 versus 10. It's backs against the wall. And
That's
these
right.
teams, these are two of the teams that we avoid the most in any sort of awkward scheduling position, back-to-back, front end of a back-to-back, coming off a layoff. But this is the complete opposite. This is the one time.
It takes Pop and Jenkins out of play.
A little bit to the most that you can take them out of play. This is it.
Right.
So much more interest in these guys than on a normal slate. And during the regular season, you had the whole mix with these guys. The first game was a normal matchup. It was the opener. And Ja came running out of the gates with 44 points and 9 assists.
Yeah.
Jamar, that was his good game against Brooks, 28, 9, and 9. But then after that, it was what you would expect from San Antonio, Memphis. The second matchup they had, it was right after Memphis had 5 games postponed. So they're coming back from a layoff. And then it was a back-to-back for San Antonio. And then the third game was a front end for Memphis. So if you just look at the average game logs for these these two teams in this matchup from these three games, you're not going to get the full picture. So we looked at the actual box scores, the context, and that's going to weigh into how we make our final decisions today. But in terms of guys to actually look at from this game, a couple of Spurs here on DraftKings are much more attractive to me than usual because of the context and because of the pricing. DeMar DeRozan at 7,000 on a 2-game slate. I like Pirtle, like you mentioned, is only 4,900 on DraftKings. A lot cheaper than FanDuel.
Yeah.
Yep, he's got to be out there against Joe Val. And then DeJounte Murray is a lot cheaper on DraftKings, 6,300. I mean, that's a much different decision than 7,700 on FanDuel.
Yeah.
So,
and he's touched 8,000 a couple times this year.
Yes, he has. In terms of the other guys, I'm not really interested in the bench guys from San Antonio. Lonnie Walker is also in play for me as a value shooting guard. And then on the Memphis side, Ja has had mixed results. He's much more expensive on DraftKings today, so he's more in play for me on FanDuel. Brooks is in play as a potential value. Don't want to pay up for Joe Val. Kyle Anderson could be a glue guy on this slate, similar to Miles Bridges yesterday. And with the bench guys, I don't know if I'll focus on these Memphis bench guys, especially if Grayson Allen is playing. It's going to get pretty crowded with Melton and Bain and company. So I'm a little more interested in these Spurs guys because of their prices.
Okay. But what about Triple J?
He's right in that mix. A little more expensive than Juan Toscano Anderson, who I like. So he's, that's one of those situations where I think he could certainly pay it off. I think he's a fine play. I don't know if he'll make my first lineup, but, I wouldn't fault anybody for putting him out there.
Sounds like somebody's building a house in the background.
I know. We got some stuff going on here in the background. I apologize for the
no worries. I want to make sure you weren't caught up in it, whatever it sounds like.
Why don't you handle the transition to the second game? I'll go close this door.
You got it, man. All right, game 2, nice 10 o'clock Eastern start, so we get 2 regular scheduled timings on these games. It should be great. And of course, it's Golden State at LA. I mean, like Andrew said, it's a really exciting game for all the big names, and it looks like everybody's playing. So that is fantastic. The Warriors come in at 39 and 33. The Lakers limped in at 42 and 30. What's incredibly ironic? Andrew, are you back?
I am.
Okay. The incredibly ironic thing, and it's almost like they're pulling a joke on all of us. The Lakers, who list literally, seriously, 7-8 guys every day, have nobody listed on the report for injuries. Zero. Nobody.
What a surprise. What a coincidence.
What a bunch of jokes.
Here we are in the first game of the play-in.
How
Everybody's
funny
healthy all of a sudden.
I mean, to not even see a probable on AD or LeBron or whatever, it's really comical. I think the joke is on us. Somebody in that LA front office has a vendetta against DFS. I think that's what it is. But the only other thing I want to say is Lee and Oubre, which is important, especially Oubre, but both of them, they're out for Golden State. Other than that, it's 100% everybody roll and go. So you got this one, my friend.
Okay, yeah. So, again, lower totals in all 3 games compared to the first one. So we don't need to stack it up just because it's Golden State and the Lakers or it's the second game. But we're going to have exposure to it, obviously. And despite saying that, I am interested in Steph and Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis is, I think, my favorite pay-up option here. He only played in one of the matchups against Golden State, and we know that Draymond is an amazing defender. But AD does have that extra length against him that makes it real tough because obviously Draymond is undersized for the role that he plays, and he usually manages to do just fine against about anybody. But AD went for 17, 17, and 7 in that first matchup. He didn't play in the next 2. And Draymond struggled, conversely. He had a 7, 8, 9 in the first game, but then he got hurt in the second one, the third game. 29 minutes, 2, 6, and 6. One of those games where he barely shoots at all, and it's not a big surprise because the Lakers in the interior, that's not where you want to, or where you can find yourself on backdoor open cuts, mixing in 4 or 5 layups. It just doesn't happen at the rim with the Lakers. So not a great offensive upside night for Draymond. But looking at the rest of the Golden State side, Steph is in play for me. He hasn't smashed against the Lakers, but to me, the decision is probably going to be Steph or LeBron. And Steph is obviously a little more healthy. We know that he's been hobbled a little bit down the stretch, but he's in very fine form with that final game against Memphis, 46 points to get this 8 seed. So I lean towards Steph right now over LeBron. And then not really fired up about the rest of the Golden State. So it kind of starts with Steph. Wiggins has struggled against these guys. Bazemore is so inconsistent. And I don't think this is going to be the game where they feature him. Not that they ever feature him, but sometimes he'll all of a sudden get 10 shots, but then there's games where he just stands in the corner and never touches it as a starter.
Right.
He can really benefit sometimes from coming off the bench, but as a starter in for Oubre, he's not my favorite play today.
Classic GPP guy.
Yep. Looney is an option here because he's so cheap on both sites, and he always seems to get 24 to 28 minutes. Won't be easy sledding against Drummond in there, but you got to pay down somewhere, and that's one option for me to pay down on this slate.
Okay.
On the bench, Toscano Anderson's my favorite option here. Again, 2-game slate, you need guys in the mid-tier, and he's one of them. And he's going to have a better matchup when he's out there in the post when there's guys like, if Montrezl Harrell gets minutes, Toscano Anderson can get things done against him.
Yep.
Poole and Mulder should also see good minutes. Poole is, certainly more attractive. He's an option. Mulder, talk about pricing. Here's an interesting one. He's 3,800 on FanDuel, and Kuzma is 4,000.
Wow.
That's why I kind of like Kuzma on FanDuel today. I think he's
that's a misprice.
He's
man.
mispriced at 4,000. So transitioning over to the Lakers, he's an option for me. With the starters, like I mentioned, I really like AD. LeBron would be the alternative to Steph for me. Schroeder has played pretty well against Golden State. Sometimes there's that one guy. If he gets Steph on him, he can be productive.
Yeah.
Drummond, has, as we've talked about here, he's looked better in the final stretch of the season, more in shape, more in tune with the Lakers. So he's in play for me. And then with the bench, like I mentioned, Kuzma is a big option for me. And then Caruso, Taylor Horton-Tucker. Don't know if I'll get to those guys.
Caruso, you could play both those guys and get for one price.
I'd take them for the price of one, no doubt. So yeah, it's sort of a pick probably 2 guys from each side type of scenario for me is what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I mean this is tough. I'll tell you what, the more and more we talk about it and look at it, and then the great stats that you brought up there, I'm almost leaning on making it a 5-3, having more guys in the first game. And let me go through a few numbers with you too. I mean, the numbers you said don't lie. I mean, they're flat out. The highest Lakers Golden State game doesn't match the lowest San Antonio Memphis game. So that's something. And it's that 218 number, is low. A playoff game under 220, because you're getting the better teams, is a little surprising. But there's reasons for that. I mean, pace, Golden State, yes, they're fast. They're third. But we know the Lakers slow it down. They're 17th, and they're even slower at times when they have their full group in there, because LeBron generally will, space out a side, try to ISO Davis, and all of that takes 10, 12 seconds off the shot clock. So, I don't think this is going to be a lightning-paced game. And I'm sure the Lakers don't want that. They'll try to take the air out of the ball a little bit and stay in a half-court set because of their advantage in the paint. The other thing is, Andrew, you've got the two of the top five defensive efficient teams in the entire league. The Lakers, with all their woes and guys out, never left first place all year. So they are the best defensive efficient team in the NBA. And Golden State all the way up to fifth. And they also played shorthanded at times. So very impressive defenses on both sides. And they both use that, that team approach to defense. And then they both struggled greatly at times. We know Steph, when he's had those hot games, it makes 10, 12 threes. That's the only thing that carries it. But you look at their offensive efficiency throughout this season, Golden State's 19th and the Lakers 24th, which for a defending championship team, that's a major struggle. But we've all watched these teams play down the stretch. If Curry wasn't hitting his shots, Golden State couldn't find offense. Sometimes they'd have to go to pull off the bench maybe to get them going. But they really struggled at times. And the Lakers, when they were shorthanded, they went 5-6 minute stretches with 0 points. So, it's not a slam dunk game. And I do love the edge, though, because I still think you're going to see, if you weigh it all out, when all the lineups are in, you're going to have more people in the industry exposed to this game as opposed to the first game. No question about it. And I think that's an edge for us. A couple of the guys I'll mention here, Curry's had a very special season and maybe the hottest run of his career as far as shooting the ball. He's been absolutely unstoppable at times. The Lakers, with their great team defense, and Andrew and I discussed this prior, we really tried to determine who's going to guard Curry for the majority of this game. And looking back at the other games, it's been a bit of a rotation. There's been guys in and out. And you'll probably see a little bit of Schroeder on him, a little bit of KCP. They'll rotate some guys to try to stay fresher, to chase him down. So I'm sure they're going to be favoring them. They'll double him at times, make somebody else step up to try to beat him. I can't imagine they're going to allow Curry to drop 50 on them and win the game single-handedly. So, that makes me a little nervous about Curry. But, he's had his best shooting game of his career, or season of his career. One guy that, I know you're not a big fan of him. I've never been a big fan of him, but I've really he's earned my respect this season, and that's Wiggins. He has stepped up in times offensively, certainly has stepped up defensively, really for the first time in his career. So, he's a buy down from Curry that if I do build without Curry, he may get a shot. But like you said, he has not done well against the Lakers and that first defense. So the jury's out there. For me, Bazemore, Looney are more GPP kind of guys. I don't have the confidence enough in Looney or his minutes. Draymond it's interesting because he's going to play an enormous amount of minutes, but unless he's popping a few threes, he's not going to get much on the interior, not against Drummond, Davis, and James. Those guys, that's a clamp down, stuff the paint, get that stuff out of here kind of a defense in there. So I don't know. Draymond at that price is a little scary. I do love the fact that he's going to get a bunch of minutes, and he's going to have maybe 14 assists and 12 rebounds, and then add in a few buckets to give them a chance. So on the fence, but probably not leaning that way. On the Lakers side, a couple of things. I do like Schroeder. I think he's had success against Curry in the back prior. I think that's who will probably guard him. I think he's dangerous. LeBron, is he 100% healthy is the $1 million question. You're going to have a lot of people playing NBA DFS that don't normally play it, that are jumping in for the playoffs, and they're going to see LeBron and know that he's starting, and they're going to dive on him. And as we all know, sure, if he plays 35 minutes plus, he's probably going to smash, but who's to say he's going to get those kind of minutes? He's definitely not right. And, we saw last night, trying to force in Beal when the dude's like 75% dragging his leg up and down the floor. I mean, you just can't do it at this level. And so if LeBron's not quite himself, and they keep him to 28 to 30 minutes, especially if they get control of the game, that could be a bust. I'm much more comfortable with the spend up of Anthony Davis. I think he's my strongest play on the board. I mean, he's healthy. Golden State does not have an answer in the paint for him. I agree with you. Certainly get Draymond defense, but Draymond's a full 6 inches, 7 inches shorter than him. Maybe not quite that much, maybe 5 or 6 inches, but shorter. And Davis has those long arms, and he's going to shoot over top of him, and he's going to get all over the glass. So I love Davis. I'm also considering Drummond, especially on the sites where I can play 2 centers, because I agree with exactly what you said. The first few games, I actually felt bad for Drummond. If you watch those games, if you go back in his history, he's a different kind of guy, almost borderline social disorder to some sense. He talks about he was bullied as a kid because he didn't fit in and this and that. So he's, it's a little bit tougher for him. And when he first went to LA, if you remember those first few games, he got fouls real quick. He didn't know what was going on. He looked totally almost panicked. And that just kept getting better and better as he got more games under his belt. And that last week of the season, he looked a bit like the old Andre Drummond that has led the league in rebounding 4 straight years, lost that this year, but he had prior, which people don't realize. So I think he can, I think they need him, and I think he can help dominate inside and let AD take the threes and the mid-rangers. So Drummond is high on my board too. So I can see the exposure that I'm going to have in this game is going to be more tilted to the Lakers side. But still decisions to be made, but I think that's really how a lot of it will play out.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun here with these great matchups, great stars getting after it for real now, trying to figure out who's going to make the real final 8 on each side. Yeah. So we're going to keep working on it throughout the afternoon, and then finalize those lineups for our members. And we invite you to join us as a member at dfscoachtalk.com. We give out full cash lineups on FanDuel, a GPP lineup, full lineups on Yahoo, the coach's clipboard on DraftKings for the bigger slates, and then smaller slates we do a core for cash, a core for GPPs. You can try the 3-day pass, or you can jump on our playoff package, 111 for the entire playoff season here, 2 months, and you get access to all of our sports at DFS Coach Talk. So jump on that. We'll get you into our Discord with an email, and we give out the lineups about 20 minutes before lock. Coach, any final thoughts here?
Yeah, if you're checking us out on YouTube, please take a second to hit that thumbs up, smash that subscription button as well, because we need you to, subscribe there. We're getting close to a goal that we had set, and we'd really appreciate for those that listen on a consistent basis to subscribe, and also hit the alert button up in the corner. That'll let you know every time a podcast posts. And with, some of the different slates and the weekend timings, the podcast may vary a little bit when they post. So it's great to get that alert. This way you don't miss anything. And also we do a golf podcast that will be coming out this afternoon for the PGA. So you're going to want to catch that. Again, you can have access to all of that with the thumbs up, subscribe, and the alert button. And, if you're listening to us on all of the different podcast audio sites, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on and on, also take a second, 5 stars, a quick comment. Our man Joe Stanton pulls the info for people that have given us 5 stars and comments. And at the end of each month, we give away a 3-day pass. So, not only does it help us, but you can win something as well. So as you can see, we have put yesterday behind us. We are on to today, lessons learned, and boy, we're ready to get after it. It's going to be a really, really fun day because, once you join the family here at Coach Talk, again, as Andrew said, you get everything that we offer when you become a member. So like today's a perfect example. If you listen to this and you say, I don't know if I want the full playoff package yet, let me just try them for 3 days. Well, guess what? Tonight you get our full baseball lineups. 12 games are on that schedule. And after hours MLB, you've got obviously our basketball with the 2 games in the playoffs. And then our golf picks are out at 8:30 tonight for the PGA that tees off tomorrow at Kiowa Island. So you get all of that, get in a great community. We all help each other out, learn, and have a heck of a lot of fun doing it. So I'm excited, Andrew. I'm rejuvenated. Revenge Wednesday is amongst us here.
It is here. So I hope everybody benefited from the build here so far, and we appreciate your support. So on behalf of the coach and the rest of the DFS Coach Talk team, I'm Andrew Hansen. We'll see you tomorrow as we look to crush it in DFS.